You've probably been told to avoid idioms in academic writing, and that's usually good advice. Most idioms are too informal for essays. But today I'm going to show you 8 idiomatic expressions that you can use in academic writing. They're formal, precise, and absolutely appropriate. You can use them safely in IELTS essays, reports, or university assignments, and they'll make your writing sound more natural and sophisticated. Let's get started. Number 1, used for introducing contrasting ideas on the one hand and on the other hand. Now, you probably already know that these are used to show two sides of the same argument. But be careful. A lot of people make mistakes with these. So let's start by looking at a good example, a correct example. On the one hand, online education increases accessibility. On the other hand, it can reduce opportunities for social interaction. This is perfect. It shows a clear contrast between a benefit, which is another way of saying an advantage. In this case, online education increases accessibility, and a drawback, which is another way of saying a disadvantage. It can reduce opportunities for social interaction. And this is the most common way that we use this structure to compare a positive and a negative side of something. And it could be negative then positive. The order doesn't matter. The important thing is that we're talking about the same topic. In this case, online education. And we use the pronoun it to avoid repetition. Okay, so now you know how to use it correctly. Let's see some of the most common mistakes. There are 4 that I want to highlight. So, number 1. On the one hand, online education increases accessibility. On the other hand, it saves students money. What's wrong with this? What do you think? Pause the video if you want to think about it longer. Okay. So, both points are positive. We've got increases accessibility, this is good, and saves students money, also good. So on the one hand and on the other hand are used to show contrast. And here, there's no contrast. Okay, if we've got 2 positive points, then what you're doing is adding information. So you could use furthermore or in addition instead. You could say, on the one hand, online education increases accessibility. Furthermore, it saves students money. Number 2, on the one hand, online education increases accessibility. On the other hand, social media can be distracting. So what do you think is the problem here? It's a topic shift. So we're talking about online education in the first sentence, and then we've switched to social media. So it's not cohesive. The fact that social media can be distracting could be seen as, a negative aspect of online education, but you would have to present it differently, perhaps. On the other hand, when studying online, students can be easily distracted, and then you might give social media as an example of something that causes the distraction. Let's look at mistake number 3. On the one hand, online education increases accessibility. On the other hand, technology is developing very quickly. What's wrong with this? This is just a related fact. So there's no contrast. Again, we're not looking at sort of a positive and a negative or a different perspective about online education. We're just mentioning a related fact. So it doesn't work. And finally, How about this one? On the one hand, online education increases accessibility. On the other hand, it can reduce opportunities for social interaction. But wait, wasn't this our correct example? Something's wrong with it. What is it? It is the comma. On the other hand, starts a new sentence. So it shouldn't appear like this, but like this. And I see this mistake all the time. Punctuation is important. Let's look at one more correct example before we move on. On the one hand, remote work offers flexibility. On the other hand, it can lead to feelings of isolation. So it's perfect. It shows a clear contrast between a benefit, remote work offers flexibility, and a drawback, it can lead to feelings of isolation, of the same topic, remote work, and we use the pronoun it to avoid repetition. Number 2, for showing reason or perspective, in the light of, in the UK, or in light of, in North American English. So we use this to show how new information or evidence influences your argument or conclusion. It's like saying considering or taking into account. In the light of these results, it's clear that renewable energy investment is essential for sustainable development. So, considering or taking into account these results, etc. Another example. In the light of this new evidence, previous assumptions about consumer behavior must be reconsidered. This idiom is perfect for evaluating results, interpreting data, or updating an argument based on recent findings. Okay, so this is really useful for our essays when you do have to evaluate information, evidence, perspectives. Number 3, this is also used for showing reason or perspective in its own right. So, in its own right is used to say that something has value for its own qualities, not just because of its connection to something else. Education should be valued in its own right, not merely as a means to economic success. So, just to point out merely, this is like saying only or just. I completely agree with this statement. I wish we lived in a world where education, like higher education, university courses were free. Maybe they are in some places, but they're not in England. It's so expensive to do a degree that most people do have to consider future prospects. Is doing this going to be worthwhile economically for me? So most people aren't in a position to study a topic just because they think it's interesting if it's not going to, steer them towards a decent job at the end of the day. I would be a perpetual student if money were no object, if I could afford it. How about you? What would you study if university courses were completely free? Let me know in the comments. And let's just look at one more example. Although it builds on earlier research, this study is significant in its own right. And just to point out, significant here is sort of a more formal synonym for important. So this study is important on its own, even if we ignore the fact that it builds on earlier research. Use this when you want to emphasize the independent importance of a concept, an object, or idea. Our 4th idiom is used for making comparisons. Along the lines of. So, along the lines of is used to give a general description without being exact. It's like saying similar to, like, or in the style of. The government should introduce a policy along the lines of the Scandinavian welfare model. So, similar to or like. The study was modelled along the lines of earlier frameworks used in predictive analytics. So, again, it was modelled in the style of earlier frameworks. We typically use this idiom when comparing ideas or suggesting a model that could be followed. Number 5 is another one for making comparisons, the gold standard. If something is the gold standard, it is the best or most reliable example of something, the ideal benchmark. Randomized controlled trials are often considered the gold standard in medical research. They're the best. Peer-reviewed publications remain the gold standard for academic credibility. True story, they are considered the best. When studying at university, if you're reading research papers in journal articles, you really want to be choosing work that has been peer-reviewed. In other words, reviewed by other academics to ensure that the work is rigorous, that the science is sound, solid, and trustworthy. So, anyone can publish, a paper. If it hasn't been peer-reviewed, how do we know that we can trust it? Using the gold standard sounds confident and formal, but just make sure your topic is suitable for a strong academic claim. Make sure that you have evidence to back it up. Number 6, for describing progress or influence, a step further or a step back. We're going to start by looking at a step further, which means progress. Progress is being made. Introducing AI into education could take learning a step further. In other words, this would be progress. Allowing public participation in policy design would take democracy a step further. So, it would lead to progress. And I just want to point out here, notice the use of the verb take. So we say take something, take learning, take democracy a step further. Now let's look at a step back, which means to decline. It's the opposite of progress. Reducing arts funding would be a step back for cultural development. So cutting funding, that is the money spent on it, would mean a step back, a decline for cultural development. Limiting access to higher education would be a step back for social equality. Absolutely. And increasing the cost of it as well. And just to point out here, you may notice that we say be a step back for something. Be a step back for cultural development. Be a step back for social equality. It would lead to a decline. These idiomatic expressions are great for essays on technology, policy, or innovation. Number 7 is another one for describing progress or influence. Hold the balance of power. So this idiom means to have control or strong influence between opposing sides. In many coalitions, smaller parties hold the balance of power and can influence key policy decisions. Yeah, I think there's a definite increase in coalition governments around the world. We've had a few in England. There's currently one in Spain. So the more established parties rely on the sort of smaller parties to be able to make anything happen. So the smaller parties, they have the power. Online platforms now hold the balance of power in shaping public opinion. They have control, a very strong influence. Definitely true. I think most people nowadays seem to get their news from social media. So they have a lot of power. This is perfect for politics or international relations essays. Our final idiom today, number 8, is also for describing progress or influence. Come into play. To come into play is to start to have an effect or become important. Cultural factors come into play when evaluating international marketing strategies. Cultural factors start to have an effect, to become important. They need to be considered. Ethical considerations come into play when developing artificial intelligence. So true. And this is one case, of course, where development is outpacing regulation. And there are a lot of ethical conflicts at the moment relating to this, which need to be considered. They have an effect. They are important. This idiom is used to explain how different factors interact or influence outcomes. Outcomes, this is a synonym for results, a nice formal synonym you can use there. So different factors, cultural factors, influence international marketing strategies. They need to be considered. So there you have it. 8 idioms you can actually use in academic writing. They'll help you sound more natural, connect ideas clearly, and express thoughts with confidence, all while keeping your writing formal and appropriate. Which of these idioms do you think is the most useful for your essays? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video, if you found it helpful, then please do give it a like, and why not subscribe for more? And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And I just want to say a huge thank you to my channel members for supporting the channel. See you in the next video.